Hello, everybody. It's Merlin here, and I wanted to do a random little live stream hangout. And some people wanted to do another Q&A. I have probably about an hour or so. So before I'm going to be busy again, I was looking through here, and I couldn't really think of anything specific I wanted to talk about um, in the news or anything. Like I feel like I've been haven't really been watching too much or reading too much. You guys can feel free to send in questions about stuff you'd like to talk about. And while you guys are sending questions in, I'm actually just going to read. I've been thinking about doing some readings of things I like, and I've got my commemorative Necronomicon book. It's the Lovecraft collection. So I'm just going to read a bit, and you guys can listen to that, watch me read, I guess. And if you want to send in some questions about stuff, I'll stop. And then if I maybe that'll jog my enthusiasm. We got some quotes from people about how important Lovecraft was to them. Got some cool artwork here. You got the guess that's like Cthulhu or somebody, and the guy stumbled across him like, should have turned around. Necronomicon, the best weird tales of H.P. Lovecraft. I got this book a couple years ago, was a gift, and I have not read all of it, unfortunately. There was an old collection I discovered like years ago, and I read some of that one, and I got this one has more, but I still didn't get them all. Let's see. Adam Canano, I remember when you did your favorite comic villains. What was the moment Zoom became one of your favorites? I don't remember a specific moment. Oh yes, thank you for liking it. Please like and share the video, get more people in the conversation. Zoom. It's been a while since I actually read that particular comic that I know got me into him. It was one of those trades because back in high school, that's kind of when I was starting to get really into comics. I wouldn't really get the issues anymore, unfortunately, because I would get lost. So I would go to my local library and pick up trades. And thankfully, you kind of could request different comics from the library, I guess. And whatever comic book lines were currently going, that were collected groups of stories in chronological order, you could continue reading. So I was into Flash for a little while, and it was the Wally West stuff that I got introduced to. And I cannot remember exactly what it was. I think Zoom was already an established villain by that point. But I just really liked how he had this really demented kind of philosophy that was very interesting, and that he wanted to basically kind of bring about more tragedy into Wally West's life. That whole idea of making him a better hero, because all the heroes are sort of kind of motivated by tragedy, and it kind of defines what they do. And things like the bigger the tragedy, the greater the hero they'll become, which if you follow comic book logic is perhaps true and is a big motivator. So I always thought it was kind of twisted how in a weird way he wants to help Wally West to become a better hero. And that makes him kind of creepier because he just thinks he's doing the right thing, which is always, I think one of the scariest things. But I can't remember the exact story. It's been a while. It was a trade probably from like the mid 2000s, early mid 2000s, that run. Let me see. Maybe, I don't know. I like Cool Air. Maybe I'll read Cool Air. I like Cool Air. It's not a very long one. Can I find it? Cool Air. Color Out of Space. Oh yeah, I saw that one with the Nick Cage adaptation. That was pretty good. If you guys are interested in that, that was pretty good. Some really good visuals in that. But yeah, send in more questions. I'll look up. I'm going to read in the meantime. All right. Cool Air. You asked me to explain why I am afraid of a draught of cool air, why I shiver more than others upon entering a cold room, and seem nauseated and repelled when the chill of evening creeps through the heat of a mild autumn day. It's appropriate. There are those who say I respond to cold as others do to a bad odor, and I am the last to deny the impression. What I will do is to relate the most horrible circumstances I ever encountered, and leave it to you to judge whether or not this forms a suitable explanation of my peculiarity. I think it was the story Blitz where Zoom caused a miscarriage. Oh, I don't remember that. Were you ever turned off by the sound of your voice when you were younger? Yeah, I think whenever somebody hears themselves like from a video or recording or something, it might sound odd to kind of hear that because it always sounds different to you than when you hear it and as other people hear it. So for a while that did throw me off, but now I can kind of sort of hear how it would be from my perspective and from others. So it threw me off originally, but I'm learning to work with it, I guess. It is a mistake to fancy that in the glare of a mid afternoon, in the clang out of a metropolis, and in the teeming midst of a shabby and commonplace rooming house, with a prosaic landlady and two stalwart men by my side. In the spring of 1923, I had secured some dreary and unprofitable magazine work in the city of New York, and being unable to pay any substantial rent, began drifting from one cheap boarding establishment to another in search of a room which might combine the qualities of decent cleanliness, endurable furnishings, and very reasonable price. That's what we all want. It soon developed that I had only a choice between different evils, but after a time I came upon a house in West 14th Street which disgusted me much less than the others I had sampled. uh, the place was a four-story mansion of brownstone, dating apparently from the late 40s, and fitted with woodwork and marble, whose stained and sullied splendor argued a descent from high levels of tasteful opulence. In the rooms, large and lofty, and decorated with impossible paper and ridiculously ornate stucco cornices, there lingered a depressing mustiness and hint of obscure cookery, but the floors were clean, the linen tolerably regular, and the hot water not too often cold or turned off, so that I came to regard it as at least a bearable place to hibernate till one might really live again. The landlady, a slatternly, almost bearded Spanish woman named Herrero, did not annoy me with the gossip or with criticisms of the late burning electric light in my third floor of the front hall room, and my fellow lodgers were as quiet and uncommunicative as one might desire, being mostly Spaniards, a little above the coarsest and crudest grade. This is Lovecraft, remember? Only the din of streetcars in the thoroughfare below provided a serious annoyance. I had been there about 3 weeks when the first odd incident occurred. One evening at about 8, I heard a spattering on the floor and became suddenly aware that I had been smelling the pungent odor of ammonia for some time. Looking about, I saw that the ceiling was wet and dripping, the soaking apparently proceeding from a corner of the side toward the street. Anxious to stop the matter at its source, I hastened to the basement to tell the landlady and was assured by her that the trouble would quickly be set right. Dr. Munez, she cried as she rushed upstairs ahead of me. He had spill his chemicals. He is too sick for doctor himself, sicker and sicker all the time. But he will not have. Oh, this is not PC at all. He is very clear in his sickness. What? I don't even know what this means. All day he take the smell. What? Him. I'm not going to do that. Let's see. But she was great once from Barcelona to how to hear of them. Mrs. Herrera disappeared upon the staircase to the fourth floor, and I returned to my room. The ammonia ceased to drip, and as I cleaned up with what had spilled and opened the window for air, I heard the landlady's heavy footsteps above me. Dr. Munoz I had never heard, save for the certain sounds as of some gasoline-driven mechanism, since his step was soft and gentle. I wondered for a moment what the strange affliction of this man might be, and whether his obstinate refusal of outside aid would not the result of a rather baseless eccentricity. There is, I reflected tritely, an infinite deal of pathos in the state of an imminent person who has come down in the world. I may never have known Dr. Munez had it not been for the heart attack that suddenly seized me one forenoon as I sat writing in my room. A heart attack. I think he's got to be exaggerating, right? Physicians had told me of the danger of those spells, and I knew that there was no time to be lost. So, remembering what the landlady had said about the invalid's help of the injured workman, I dragged myself upstairs and knocked feebly at the door above mine. My knock was answered in good English by a curious voice some distance to the right, asking my name and business, and these things being stated, there came an opening of the door next to one of the ones I had sought. A rush of cool air, title drop, greeted me, and though the day was one of the hottest of late June, I shivered as I crossed the threshold of a large apartment whose rich and tasteful decoration surprised me in the nest of squalor and seediness. A folding couch now filled in the diurnal roll of a sofa, and the mahogany furniture Sumptuous hangings, old paintings, and mellow bookshelves all bespoke a gentleman's study rather than a boarding house bedroom. I now saw that the hall room above mine, the little room of bottle machines where Mrs. Herrero had mentioned, was merely the laboratory of the doctor, and that his main living quarters lay in the spacious adjoining room, whose convenient alcoves and large contiguous bathroom permitted him to hide all dressers and obtrusively utilitarian devices. Dr. Munoz, most certainly, was a man of birth, cultivation, and discrimination. Who would be the three villains for the Punisher in the MCU trilogy of movies that does not include Jigsaw since Punisher killed him in season 2? Spoilers! Let me see. I'll put Lovecraft down for a minute. Because to be honest with you, although it's funny, I did recently rewatch the 2005 Punisher Troll. I'm not big enough of a Punisher fan to list all of his original villains, so I'm going to actually look at the list and see if I can remember any. Because I can probably tell you right now, they're probably not going to be main villains of his. Okay. I didn't watch that season. I didn't really watch much of the MCU show. Did the Russian show up? I actually do like the Russian. I like his shirt. I don't remember him. I'm going by the ones I know. Nope. Nope. Mm-mm. Is Dakin technically a Punisher villain? It's like a stretch. Well, I guess the Russian would be up there. If Bullseye's considered one, I guess. And I would be really cool if the Kingpin showed up, actually. I know he's borrowing them from Daredevil, but I think he comes into conflict with them pretty consistently. Oh, the Russian died? Oh. Maybe Bushwhacker? Maybe. But yes, welcome, people. Welcome. I'm just kind of reading in between. Send in your questions about stuff, and we'll talk about it. Be some more MCU stuff. Let's see where to leave off. Ah, yes. The figure before me was short but exquisitely proportioned and clad in somewhat formal dress of perfect fit and cut. A high-bred face of masterful, though not arrogant expression was adorned by a short iron gray full beard, and an old-fashioned pince-nez shielded the full dark eyes and surmounted an aquiline nose, which gave off a touch to psychogymny otherwise dominantly celebritarian. Thick, well-trimmed hair that argued the punctual calls of a barber was parted gracefully above the high forehead, and the whole picture of one's striking intelligence and superior blood and breeding. You know, I never realized how, wow, I don't know, this is a lot more questionable than I originally thought. Nevertheless, as I saw Dr. Munoz in the blast of cool air title drop again, I felt a repugnance which nothing in his aspect could justify. Only his lividly inclined complexion and coldness of touch could have afforded a physical basis for this feeling, and even these things that should have been excusable considering the man's known invalidism. It might, too, have been singular cold that alienated me, for such chilliness was abnormal on so hot a day, and the abnormal always excites aversion, distrust, and fear. But repugnance was soon forgotten in admiration, for the strange physician's extreme skill at once became manifest despite the ice-coldness of shakiness of his bloodless-looking hands. He clearly understood my needs at a glance, and ministered to them with a master's deftness, the while reassuring me in a finely modulated, though oddly hollow and timbreless voice, that he was the bitterest of sworn enemies to death, and had sunk his fortune and lost all of his friends in a lifetime, a bizarre experiment devoted to his bafflement and extirpation. Something of the benevolent fanatic seemed to reside in him, and he rambled on almost garrulously as he sounded my chest and mixed a suitable draught of drugs fetched from the smaller laboratory room. Evidently, he found the society of well-born man a rare novelty in this dingy environment, and was moved to accustomed speech as memories of better days surged over him. His voice, if queer, was at least soothing, and I could not perceive that he breathed as the fluent sentences rolled urbanely out. He sought to distract my mind from my own seizure by speaking of his theories and experiments. I could remember his tactfully consoling me about my weak heart by instantly that will of consciousness are stronger than organic life itself, so that if a bodily frame, but originally healthy and carefully preserved, it may, through a scientific enhancement of these qualities, retain a kind of nervous animation despite the most serious of impairments, defects, or even absences in the battery of specific organs. He might, he half jestingly said, some day teach me to live, or at least to possess some kind of conscious existence without any heart at all. For his part, he was afflicted with a complication of maladies requiring a very exact regimen, which included constant cold. Any marked rise in a very exact regimen, which included that, in a temperature might, if prolonged, affect him fatally, and the frigidity of his habitation, some 55 or 56 degrees Fahrenheit, was maintained by an absorptive system of ammonia cooling, the gasoline engine of whose pumps I often heard in the room below, from the room below. Relieved of my seizure in a marvelously short while, I left the shivery palace a disciple and devotee of the gifted recluse. After that, I paid him frequently overcoated calls, listening while he told me of secret researches and almost ghastly results, and trembling a bit while I examined the unconventional and astonishingly ancient volumes on his shelves. I was eventually, I may add, almost cured of a disease for all time by his skillful ministrations. It seemed that he did not scorn the incantations of the medievalists, since he believed these cryptic formulae to contain rare psychological stimuli which might conceivably have singular effects on the substance of a nervous system from which organic pulsations had fled. I was touched by his account of the aged Dr. Torres of Valencia, who had shared his earlier experiments and nursed him through the great illness of 18 years before, whence his present disorders proceeded. No sooner had the venerable practitioner saved his colleague than he himself succumbed to the grim enemy he had fought. Perhaps the strain had been too great, for Dr. Munoz made it whisperingly clear, though not in detail, that the methods of healing had been most extraordinary, involving scenes and processes not welcomed by elderly and conservative Galens. Team up with season 3 Black Widow. I saw the message. If I guess they might have to recast Scarlett Johansson, maybe. I don't know if she wants to do the Netflix shows, but that would be an interesting team up. I don't think the MCU Black Widow would really get along with Frank Castle that much. So I think that, well, I don't know. I guess she is kind of typically an assassin too, but she never really comes off as being that shady in the movies. So I don't know if that would work or not, to be completely honest. Well, I was really looking forward to her movie. I'm sorry I got pushed back, but I'm taking you guys are enjoying listening to me read this questionable Lovecraft story with the the phonetics of people speaking and whatnot. But if not, feel free to send in more questions. I could just keep me reading. I think I could get through this. It's a pretty short story. As the weeks passed, I observed with regret that my new friend was indeed slowly but unmistakably losing ground physically, as Mrs. Herrera had suggested. The livid aspect of his countenance was intensified, his voice became more hollow and indistinct, his muscular emotions more or less perfectly coordinated, and his mind and will displayed less resilience and initiative. Of this sad change he seemed to be by no means unaware, and little by little his expression and conversation took on a gruesome irony, which restored in me something of a subtle repulsion I originally felt. He developed strange caprices, acquiring a fondness for exotic spices and Egyptian incense, till his room smelled like the vault of a sepulchred pharaoh in the ancient Valley of Kings. At the same time, his demands for cold air increased, and with my aid he amplified the ammonia piping of his room and modified the pumps and feed his refrigerating machine till he could keep the temperature as low as 34 to 40 degrees, and finally even 28 degrees, the bathroom and laboratory, of course, being less chilled, in order for the water not to freeze and that the chemical processes might not be impeded. Captain America, Black Widow, Punisher team up with Captain America season 1, you like for a new season of a new show? That could be good. I would like to see Captain America and Black Widow team up, but I don't know if that's going to happen in the near future. I'm not sure what they're doing with Black Widow, to be honest. I guess we'll see. I don't know if she was planning to be done or if it would have to do more with the success of her movie. But it would be cool if she got a show. I know there were a bunch in line, but I don't know what's going on with that on Disney Plus, honestly. But yeah, send them more questions, guys, if you want. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep reading. All right. They name dropped the title a couple times. The tenant adjoining him complained of an icy air from the connecting doors, so I helped him fit heavy hangings to obviate the difficulty. A kind of growing horror, of a true and morbid cast, seemed to possess him. He talked of death incessantly, but laughed hollowly when such things as burial or funeral arrangements were gently suggested. All in all, he became a disconcerting and even gruesome companion, yet in my gratitude for his healing, I could not well abandon him to the strangers around him, and was careful to dust his room and attend to his needs each day, muffled in a heavy ulster, which I bought especially for the purpose. I likewise did much for his shopping, and gasped in bafflement at some of the chemicals he ordered from the druggists and laboratory supply houses. An increasing and unexplained atmosphere of panic seemed to rise around his apartment. The whole house, as I have said, had a musty odor, but the smell in his room was worse, and in spite of all the spices and incense, and the pungent chemicals of new incessant baths, which he insisted on taking unaided, I perceived that it must be connected with his ailment, and shuddered when I reflected of what that ailment might be. Mrs. Herrero crossed herself when she looked at him, and gave him up reservedly to me, not letting even her son Esteban continue to run errands for him. When I suggested other physicians, the sufferer would fly into as much of a rage as he seemed to dare to entertain. He evidently feared the physical effect of violent emotion, yet his will and driving force waxed rather than waned, and he refused to be confined to his bed. The lassitude of his earlier ill days gave place to a return of his fiery purpose, so that he seemed to about to hurl defiance at the death demon, even as that ancient enemy seized him. The pretense of eating, always curiously like a formality with him, he virtually abandoned, and the mental power alone appeared to keep him from total collapse. He acquired a habit of writing long documents of some sort, which he carefully sealed and filled with injunctions that I transmit them after his death to certain persons whom he named, for the most part lettered East Indians, but including a once celebrated French physician, now generally thought dead, about whom the most inconceivable things had been whispered. As it happened, I burned all these papers undelivered and unopened. His aspect and voice became utterly frightful, and his presence almost unbearable. One September day, an unexpected glimpse of him induced an epileptic fit in a man who had come to repair his electric desk lamp, a fit from which he prescribed effectively whilst keeping himself well out of sight. That man, oddly enough, had been through the terrors of the Great War without having incurred any fright so thorough. Then, in the middle of October, the horror of horrors came upon with stupefying suddenness. One night, about 11, the pump of refrigerating machine broke down, so that within 3 hours the process of ammonia cooling became impossible. Dr. Munoz summoned me by the thumping of floor, and I worked desperately to repair the injury while my host cursed in a tone whose lifeless, rattling hollowness surpassed description. My amateur efforts, however, proved of no use, and when I had a new piston would have been obtained, the moribund hermit's rage and fear, swelling to grotesque proportions, seemed likely to shatter what remained of his failing physique, and once a spasm caused him to clap his hands to his eyes and rush into the bathroom. He groped his way out with the face tightly bandaged, and I never saw his eyes again. The frigidity of the apartment was now sensibly diminishing, and at about 5 a.m, the doctor retired to the bathroom, commanding me to keep supplied with all ice I could obtain at all night drugstores and cafeterias. As I would return from sometimes discouraging trips and lay my spoils before the clouded bathroom door, I could hear a restless splashing within and a thick voice croaking about from the door. More! More! At length that warm day broke, and the shops opened one by one. I asked Esteban either to help me with the ice fetching while I obtained the pump piston, or to order the piston while I continued with the ice, but uninstructed by Mother, he absolutely refused. Let's see. During Daredevil Season 3, Black Widow teams up with Daredevil to take out Bullseye and Fisk. In Season 1 of Punisher, teams with Captain America to take out Rollins and Billy Russo Jigsaw. Oh, okay. Let me see. Ah, yes. Finally, I hired a seedy-looking loafer whom I encountered at the corner of 8th Avenue to keep up the patience supplied with ice from a little shop where I introduced him, and applied myself diligently to the task of finding a pump piston and engaging workmen competent to install it. The task seemed interminable, and I raged almost as violently as the hermit when I saw the hours slipping by in a breathless, foodless round of vain telephoning, and a hectic quest from place to place, hither and thither by subway or surface car. About noon, I encountered a suitably supply far down to town, and at approximately 1:30 that afternoon arrived at my boarding place with the necessary paraphernalia and two sturdy and intelligent mechanics. I had done all I could and hoped it was in time. Black terror, however, had preceded me. The house was in utter turmoil, and above the chatter of awed voices I heard a man praying in deep basso. Fiendish things were in the air, and lodgers told over the beards of their rosaries that they caught the odor from beneath the doctor's closed door. The lounger I had hired, it seems, had fled screaming and mad-eyed not long after his second delivery of ice, perhaps as a result of excessive curiosity. He could not, of course, have locked the door behind him, yet it was now fastened, presumably from the inside. There was no sound within save a nameless sort of thick, slow dripping. Briefly consulting Mrs. Herrero and the workman, despite a fear that gnawed my inmost soul, I advised the breaking down of the door, but the landlady found a way to turn the key from the outside with some wire device. We had previously opened the doors of all the other rooms in the hall and flung out the windows to the very top. Now, noses protected by handkerchiefs, we tremblingly invaded the accursed south room, which blazed with the warm sun of early afternoon. A kind of dark, slimy trail led from the open bathroom door to the hall door, and thence to the desk, where a terrible little pool had accumulated. Something was scrawled there in pencil in an awful blind hand of a piece of paper, hideously smeared as though by the very claws that traced the hurried last words. Then the trail led to the couch and ended utterly. What was or had been on the couch I cannot and dare not say here, but there is that I saw shivered puzzled out in the stickingly smeared paper before I drew a match and burned it to a crisp. What I puzzled out in terror as the landlady and two mechanics rushed frantically from that hellish place to babble their incoherent stories at the nearest police station. The nauseous words seemed to well nigh the incredible in that yellow sunlight, with the clatter of cars and motor trucks ascendingly clamorously from crowded 14th Street. Yet I confess that I believed them then. Whether I believe them now, I honestly do not know. There are things about which it is better not to speculate, and all I can say is that I hate that smell of ammonia, and grow faint at the draught of unusually cool air. The end, ran the noisome scrawl, is here. No more ice. The man looked and ran away. Warmer every minute, and the tissues can't last. I fancy you know what I said about the will and the nerves and the preserved body, that the organs ceased to work. It was a good theory, but I couldn't keep up the indefinitely. There was a gradual deterioration that I had not foreseen. Dr. Torres knew, but the shock had killed him. He couldn't stand what he had to do. He had to get me in that strange, dark place when he minded my letter and nursed me back. The organs never would work again. It had been done my way, artificial preservation. For you see, I died that time 18 years ago. Ah! He was already dead. What a twist. It's a great story. Yeah, I would have. I don't know if they're gonna bring any more, to be completely honest. I guess it really depends. I think the Netflix shows were honestly kind of uneven. To be fair, they were very uneven. But I liked a lot of the starts. I thought there was some really good writing there. I don't know. I'm not really sure what they're gonna do. But I don't know. I guess, let's see, I probably got about a half an hour or so. So I read a whole short story. So I don't know if that's going to jog any thoughts. Let's see, what could I talk about in the meantime while you guys send in questions? Got to like the video, got to share it, got to spread it around. Send in more questions. I'm not sure what to talk about. Zoom, Daredevil, Netflix shows. Hope that you can get Punisher solo adventure and Daredevil. So during the I'll be honest with you, I don't think that there's gonna be much storyline focusing on the blip anymore. I definitely think there is potential for that, but I think that with the finality of Endgame, it's kind of like they wrapped up a lot of story arcs, and especially with everything going on with coronavirus and production kind of being halted. I think it's going to slow the momentum of Marvel movies a little bit. So I think that by the time we could do more storylines around the blip stuff, I don't know if we really would anymore because I don't know if we'd really be that interested, to be completely honest. Um, yeah, I don't really know, to be completely honest. I don't know if they're going to do that just because I think that they might feel like it might be going backwards at this point. They probably want to try and get beyond that because that was kind of like a big wrap up for a lot of storylines. Let me see. Uh, yeah, I got nothing. I got nothing. So I really don't. Might just read more stuff. What else we got? Um, Mountains of Madness is too long. Shadowlands is too long. It's too long. It's too long. Some really short ones in here, I think. Ah, yes, the Lagons de Camp controversial. Yeah, sure, sure. You know, probably for some kind of subterfuge, like maybe to infiltrate Thanos' ship or something. I I think the reason they kept them separate was because they're street level people, you know. Yeah, pretty much. Why? Why do you wish that? Tell me. Why? Why are you so interested in the blip? Because I guess would that be because there would have been so much chaos with all like, half the population disappearing and with a lot of the heroes missing, so that might have been kind of a good place for the real vigilantes to take care of the chaos. Is that what you're thinking? Because I guess they would have fit, but that's if theoretically both of them were around. Because I don't know if they talk. If any of them disappeared in the blip, I don't really know. Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. Hmm. All right. Mm-hmm. I see more people are dropping in. You can send in questions if you want. I don't really know what to talk about, so I just read a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what you guys got. So send in some questions, or I'll probably wrap it up soon. To be honest, because I don't really know what to talk about. Anybody? Talked about it before, man. Talked about it before. Uh, I think she'd make a good leader. I mean, she's the best movie thus far, best character DC's got right now. So I think she's pretty strong for it. I think it's different. It's a different way to go because Superman is kind of the traditional leader. So it's interesting because they've had such a stop and start with the Superman in their universe that I think Wonder Woman's definitely an easy one to fall back on, especially because Batman's kind of a mess too. Hey, Frederick. Yeah. Frederick dropped by. Hmm. All right. I got a fun idea. I don't know how this is going to work, but I have here a big volume of manga, and I don't think anybody saw it. No, I did not read the Witcher books yet. I'll have to get around to it at some point. For those that are interested, see if you can guess what manga I'm reading. I'm going to try and avoid using any names. So let's see. All right. Got a crater. Huh? What? But how in the is this blank that was talking about? Run! Don't get cocky, boy. You can't really think you can beat me. What do you think? Ho! Says Ho. Arrogant little snip. Well then, let me show you my true terrible power. Ka-ha! Gum! Yeah! Ah! This isn't that difficult. Well, now you know. Whoopee. Dom. Whoa. Ah. Pow. It's definitely shonen. Zud. Staggering. It's kind of a shocked expression to a panel of the individual staring off at him. Impossible. I can't have been hurt, but by just a couple of punches. Urgh. The camera is broken, but something amazing is happening. And that was one chapter. You little talk. What kind of sound effect is that? The artwork in this is really good. Oh man. I never thought such a being could exist in this world. He's actually stronger than me. But that doesn't mean I lose. That monster. I forgot I actually had this section. I actually found this at a like a farmer's market. And that's actually where I got a bunch of the Star Trek books back there. I got like 30 of them. And they had a couple of these volumes, and I was like, well, I wonder why they're here. And I think it's because they're literally probably the least popular part of this particular series. Which I don't know. In retrospect might be a little bit harsh, but it's kind of enjoyable, I guess. But it's a pretty famous one. Well, it seems like it's a pretty quiet evening. Uh, Not a lot of people are listening to me read and make sound effects at this point. So I think I'll probably wrap it up. I was just kind of trying to kill some time. I have something I got to do here in a little bit. So yeah, that might be another one of these coming up soon. I just need to think of some more topics to discuss in the meantime in lieu of questions. But thank you, people, for dropping by for this random little live stream thing. And hopefully we'll do it more soon. All right. Stay magical, everybody.